Emma was only 7 years old, but her world already had a center, a fluffy golden dog named Lyly. From the moment Lyly came home as a small puppy, Emma treated her as more than just a pet. Lyly was her sister, her best friend, her playmate, and the one she whispered secrets to at night when the house was quiet. They were inseparable. Wherever Emma went, Lyly's paws followed. That evening was like any other. The sun was setting, casting warm colors across the small suburban neighborhood where Emma lived with her parents. The kitchen smelled of dinner, her mother was busy chopping vegetables, and her father was fixing something in the garage. Emma sat on the floor of her room, braiding Lyly's fur with pink ribbons, giggling at the dog's calm patience. Lyly wagged her tail slowly, as if she understood that her job was simply to make the little girl happy. But in the blink of an eye, that normal evening changed. Emma noticed Lyly wasn't wagging her tail anymore. The golden dog let out a soft whimper and slumped to the floor. At first, Emma thought she was playing. "Come on, Lyly, don't be lazy," she said with a laugh. But then Lyly didn't move. Her chest rose and fell heavily, and her eyes looked tired, almost as if she was slipping away. Emma's tiny heart raced. "Mommy," she called out, but her mother was running water in the sink and didn't hear her. She shouted again, her voice trembling, but it came out weak, swallowed by the normal household noises. Panic crawled inside her chest. Emma remembered something her teacher once told the class: if there's an emergency, call the emergency number. The words echoed in her mind. She didn't know exactly what counted as an emergency, but to her, this was the biggest one. Lyly was not moving, and nothing else mattered. Her small fingers shook as she reached for the phone on the table. The buttons looked bigger than usual, and her tears made her vision blurry. She tried to remember the number. 911, she whispered to herself, pressing the buttons as quickly as she could. But in her panic, her finger slipped. She didn't realize she had pressed the wrong sequence. The line rang. Emma clutched the phone with both hands, holding it to her ear as if her life and Lyly's depended on it. Her voice was trembling when someone finally picked up on the other end. "Hello." But Emma was too desperate to notice who it was. She cried into the phone, "Help! My Lyly dying." Her sobs filled the line. The person on the other end froze for a moment, confused. But Emma didn't wait. She kept speaking, her words spilling out through her tears. "She's not moving, she's my best friend, please come, I don't know what to do." Her small hands gripped the phone tightly. She could hear her own shaky breathing, mixed with the faint sounds of someone trying to calm her down. Emma didn't know she had not reached the emergency line at all. She had called a private office number that belonged to someone she had never heard of, someone whose world was completely different from hers. But in that moment, none of that mattered to Emma. Her entire world was lying on the floor at her feet, breathing faintly, and her only hope was that the stranger on the other end of the phone could help her. She pressed her cheek against Lyly's fur while holding the phone tightly against her ear. Her tears dropped onto the dog's coat as she whispered between sobs, "Please don't leave me, Lyly. Please stay. Someone will come. Someone will help." Her parents still didn't know what was happening. Her mother thought Emma was just playing with her dog, and her father couldn't hear her from the garage. The little girl was on her own in that moment, fighting the biggest fear she had ever known. Her heart beat loudly, almost drowning out the voice on the other end of the phone. But she didn't care who was listening. All she knew was that she had to keep asking for help. "Please," she whispered again, her voice cracking. "Please save Lyly." Daniel Mercer was not the kind of man who usually answered random calls. He was a billionaire, the owner of several companies, and his schedule was always packed with meetings, decisions, and people constantly asking for his time. Most of the calls that reached his private office were filtered by assistants, secretaries, or an automated system. His personal phone hardly ever rang without being planned in advance. But that evening was different. He was sitting alone in his office on the top floor of a glass building. The city lights glittered below, and papers were scattered across his desk. For once, the billionaire felt tired not from the money or power he held, but from the emptiness that often came with it. His assistants had already left for the day. The silence of the office pressed around him when suddenly the phone on his desk rang. He stared at it for a moment, surprised. Hardly anyone had that number. A part of him wanted to ignore it, to let it ring into the void, but something inside pushed him to pick it up. "Hello," he said, his voice deep and steady. What he heard next stopped him cold. A child's voice, trembling and broken by sobs, rushed through the line. "Help! My Lyly dying." Daniel sat up straight in his chair. For a second, he thought he must have misheard. But the crying continued, desperate and raw. He could hear the sound of tiny gasps for breath, the way a child tries to talk while fighting back tears. "Who is this?" Daniel asked carefully, his voice softening. He was used to people calling him for money, for deals, for help with problems that were more financial than emotional. But this was different. The little girl didn't answer his question. She just kept crying. "She won't move. Please, please help. She's my best friend." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He could hear the fear in her voice, so real and pure that it pierced through the walls he had built over years of business and responsibility. Whoever this child was, she wasn't pretending. She wasn't calling for money. She was calling for love, for life, for someone she couldn't lose. He leaned forward, gripping the phone. "Sweetheart, calm down. Tell me, who is Lyly? Is she a person? Your sister?" Through tears, Emma's small voice answered, "No, she's my dog. My Lyly. She's dying, please help me, I don't know what to do." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost picture her somewhere far away, a little girl crouched on the floor, clutching the phone in one hand and her beloved dog in the other. Her voice cracked with pain, a sound too heavy for someone so young. Most men in his position might have ended the call, explaining she had dialed the wrong number. But Daniel Mercer was not like most men. Something about that fragile voice shook him to his core. He thought about his own childhood, about the golden retriever he had once loved when he was small. The dog's name had been Max, and Daniel had cried for weeks when Max passed away. It was a memory he rarely let himself revisit, but tonight it came rushing back like it had happened yesterday. "Listen to me," Daniel said gently, steadying his tone so he wouldn't frighten her further. "You're safe. I'm here. What's your name?" The girl sniffled. "Emma." "Okay, Emma. I hear you. I know you're scared. Can you tell me where you are right now? Your address?" Emma hesitated. She had been told never to give her address to strangers, but she was too desperate to care. Between sobs, she blurted out the name of her street, her house number, her town. The words tumbled out like water escaping from a broken glass. Daniel scribbled it down on the paper in front of him. His mind was already working quickly, the way it always did in business deals. Except this time it wasn't about profits, it was about saving a life that mattered deeply to this little girl. "Emma," he said softly, "I need you to stay calm. I want you to keep talking to Lyly. Pet her, let her hear your voice. I'm going to send help, I promise." Emma clutched the phone harder, whispering into Lyly's fur, "Did you hear that, Lyly? Someone is coming. You'll be okay." Daniel pressed a button on his desk phone, calling his head of security. Within seconds, his most trusted staff answered. "Yes, Mr. Mercer." "I need you to listen carefully," Daniel said. His voice was firm now, carrying the weight of urgency. A little girl called me by mistake. Her dog is in critical condition. I have her address. I want a team at that location immediately, medical staff, transport, whatever we can get. Move fast. The man on the other end didn't question him. Years of working with Daniel had taught him that when his tone shifted like this, it was serious. As Daniel gave instructions, he kept the phone to his ear, listening to Emma's quiet sobs. He didn't want her to feel alone. "I'm still here, Emma," he said gently. "You're not alone anymore. We'll help Lyly. Just keep holding her." On the other side of the line, Emma's breathing grew steadier. His calm voice gave her something to cling to, like a rope thrown to someone lost in a storm. She didn't understand who he was or why he was helping her. She only knew that someone had answered, and that was enough for her heart to keep hoping. Daniel glanced out of the wide windows of his office. The city below was still alive with traffic and noise, but for once he felt connected to something real. Not the markets, not the profits, not the numbers on his screen, but a child's cry for help. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Mercer felt like his wealth, his power, his entire life had a purpose. Daniel's office, usually filled with the quiet hum of computers and the glow of city lights, was suddenly alive with action. The billionaire had given the order, and now his trusted staff moved like clockwork. His head of security contacted the private medical team. His helicopter pilot was alerted. Within minutes, a plan was in motion. But while everything was being arranged at high speed, Daniel stayed on the line with Emma. He couldn't bring himself to hang up. The little girl's sobbing voice clung to his ear, reminding him that this was not just another business deal to be handled. It was a child's fragile world, crumbling in front of her eyes. "Emma," he said softly, "can you tell me what Lyly looks like right now? Is she breathing?" Emma sniffled, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She was curled on the floor beside her dog, her small body pressed against Lyly's warm fur. She's breathing, but it's slow. She won't open her eyes. I'm scared." "You're doing so well, Emma," Daniel encouraged. His voice was calm, steady, the way one speaks to a frightened bird. "Keep talking to her. Dogs can hear the love in your voice. She needs to feel that you're with her." Emma nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "Lyly, I'm here," she whispered, stroking the golden fur with trembling fingers. "Don't go away. Someone is coming. Just stay with me." The billionaire's heart clenched at the sound. He could almost see her tiny form, her tear-streaked face, the innocence of her words. This wasn't just about saving a pet. This was about saving the light in a child's world. Meanwhile, across the city, engines roared to life. Daniel's private helicopter was being prepared. Two of his medics, trained not just for people but also for emergency animal care, were rushing toward the landing pad with equipment. They didn't ask why their boss was suddenly sending them on such an unusual mission. They trusted him, and that was enough. Daniel himself grabbed his coat and headed to the rooftop. He wasn't going to sit in his office and wait for reports. He wanted to be there. He wanted Emma to know she wasn't crying into a void, that someone real was coming. As he climbed into the helicopter, he kept the phone pressed to his ear. The rotors thundered to life, filling the night air with sound, but Daniel didn't care. "Emma," he said above the noise, "I'm on my way to you. Just a little longer, okay?" Emma's eyes widened. She had no idea who this man really was, but the certainty in his voice gave her hope. "You promise?" she asked in a whisper, her tears slowing. "I promise," Daniel said firmly. "I won't let you down." The helicopter lifted into the air, slicing through the night sky. The city lights blurred beneath them, and Daniel's gaze was fixed forward, his mind replaying Emma's sobs over and over. Back in the small house, Emma stayed by Lyly's side. Her parents were still unaware of what was happening, though her mother was beginning to notice the unusual silence in Emma's room. But Emma didn't want to leave Lyly even for a second. Her world was narrowed down to the soft rise and fall of her dog's chest and the comforting sound of the stranger's voice in her ear. "Do you have a favorite memory with Lyly?" Daniel asked gently, trying to keep her calm as the helicopter sped toward her. Emma sniffled but managed a small smile through her tears. "When I was sick last winter, she never left my bed. She just stayed with me, like she knew I was sad. She always makes me feel better." Daniel's throat tightened. He thought of Max, his childhood dog, who had done the same for him when he was a boy hiding from the loneliness of a large, empty house. He understood her pain in a way he hadn't expected. "You're very lucky to have her," he said softly. "And she's lucky to have you. Hold on to that memory, Emma. It will give you strength." The helicopter raced forward, the city giving way to quieter suburbs. Daniel's team guided the pilot using the address Emma had given. Every minute felt like an hour. He knew they were racing against time. Meanwhile, Emma's mother finally noticed her daughter's voice behind the closed bedroom door. She pushed it open slightly and froze when she saw Emma crouched on the floor, clutching the phone, tears running down her cheeks as she stroked their family dog. "Emma, what's wrong?" her mother gasped, rushing forward. Emma shook her head frantically. "Mommy, shhh. Someone's coming to help Lyly. Don't take the phone. Please don't take it." Her mother, startled, didn't understand. She knelt beside her daughter, her eyes widening when she saw Lyly's limp body. Fear filled her face, but before she could speak, Daniel's voice carried from the phone. "Ma'am, this is Daniel Mercer. Your daughter accidentally called my line instead of emergency services. I've already dispatched medical help. They're almost there." Emma's mother blinked, stunned, but the calm authority in his voice left no room for doubt. She placed a hand on Emma's shoulder, tears filling her own eyes. "Thank you," she whispered into the phone, overwhelmed. Minutes later, the thunder of rotor blades echoed over the neighborhood. Emma looked up through her bedroom window and saw bright lights cutting through the darkness. Her small heart leaped with hope. "They're here, Emma," Daniel said over the phone. "Open the door for them." "I'm coming, too." For the first time in what felt like forever, Emma allowed herself to believe Lyly might actually be saved. She hugged her dog tightly and whispered, "Hold on, Lyly. They're coming for you." The race against time was nearly over, but for Emma, it felt like a miracle was just beginning. The sound of the helicopter blades faded into the night as Daniel and his medical team landed near Emma's neighborhood. The quiet street had never seen anything like it before. Neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering in surprise, but for Emma, the loud thrum was not frightening, it was hope arriving from the sky. The door of her house swung open, and the medical team rushed in carrying bags of equipment. Emma clutched Lyly tightly, her small arms wrapped around the dog as if she could shield her from everything. Her eyes widened when a tall man in a dark coat stepped through the door behind them. It was Daniel Mercer. She didn't know his name, or what he did, but she recognized his voice instantly. The deep, steady tone that had comforted her through the phone was now right there in her living room. For a moment, she just stared at him, her tears still glistening on her cheeks. "You really came," she whispered. Daniel knelt down to her level, his expensive shoes forgotten on the carpet, his focus only on the child. He gave her a gentle smile. "Of course I did, Emma. I promised you, didn't I?" Emma's mother stood nearby, still overwhelmed by everything happening so quickly. She had no idea who this man truly was, but the way her daughter's small hand clung to his sleeve told her that he was not a stranger anymore, at least, not to Emma's heart. The medics carefully lifted Lyly onto a stretcher made for animals. They examined her quickly, their hands moving with practiced precision. One of them looked up and said firmly, "She needs to be transported immediately." We'll get her stable on the way. Emma's chest tightened. Where are you taking her? I don't want to lose her. Daniel reached out, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We're taking her to a special hospital where the doctors can help her. You can come with us. Her small eyes searched his, and after a long pause, she nodded. Okay, but don't let them leave me behind. Not for a second, Daniel promised. The next moments blurred into motion. Emma's mother grabbed a coat for her daughter, and together they followed Daniel and the team back to the waiting helicopter. The neighbors whispered more loudly now, pointing at the unusual scene, but Emma hardly noticed. All she saw was Lyly being carried carefully, her golden fur glowing under the bright helicopter lights. The ride to the veterinary hospital was filled with tension. Emma sat on a seat beside the stretcher, her small hand resting on Lily's paw. Daniel sat across from her, watching silently. He could see how tightly Emma held on, refusing to let go. Every now and then, she whispered softly into Lily's ear, her words drowned out by the roar of the rotors but clear in their meaning, "Stay with me." Daniel's mind wandered as he watched her. He remembered being a boy, about Emma's age, sitting on the floor of his own home with Max, his dog. He remembered the night Max fell ill, the helplessness he had felt when no one seemed to care as much as he did. It was the first time he had felt truly powerless. Seeing Emma now, he realized he had been given a chance to rewrite that story not for himself, but for her. The helicopter landed on the roof of one of the best veterinary hospitals in the region. The medics moved swiftly, transferring Lyly into the hands of waiting doctors and nurses. Emma and her mother followed closely, with Daniel walking beside them, his tall figure a shield against the chaos of the emergency. Inside, the white hallways glowed brightly. Machines beeped, voices called out instructions, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant. Emma clung to her mother's hand, but her eyes never left the stretcher carrying Lyly. "Please don't let her die," she whispered again, her voice so soft that only Daniel heard it. He bent down slightly, his expression kind. "Emma, the best doctors are here now. They'll do everything they can. And I'll stay right here with you until we know she's safe." Emma nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks once more. Somehow, knowing that he wasn't leaving made the wait a little easier to bear. The doctors took Lyly into a treatment room, and the doors swung shut. For the first time, Emma was separated from her beloved dog. She pressed her face into her mother's side and cried silently, her small body trembling. Daniel stood nearby, his hands in his pockets, his face thoughtful. He could have left then, left the family to handle it on their own. But instead, he sat down in the waiting area with them. Minutes turned into hours. Each tick of the clock felt heavier than the last. To keep Emma distracted, Daniel gently asked her questions. "What games do you like to play with Lyly?" Emma sniffled, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. "We play hide and seek. I hide under the bed, and she always finds me. Sometimes I hide in the closet, but she scratches at the door until I come out." Daniel smiled faintly. "She sounds very clever." Emma's lips trembled, but a small smile appeared. "She is. She's the smartest dog in the whole world." Her mother listened quietly, grateful for the way the stranger, this man she barely knew, was keeping her daughter calm in the hardest moment of her young life. Finally, after what felt like forever, the doors opened. A doctor stepped out, pulling off his gloves. His expression was serious but not hopeless. "She's stable for now," he said. "It looks like she ingested something poisonous, but we've given her treatment. The next 24 hours will be critical. She'll need close monitoring." Emma's heart leaped with relief. She didn't fully understand the medical words, but she understood the most important part: Lyly was still alive. She turned toward Daniel with wide eyes. "She's okay? She's not gone?" Daniel crouched down in front of her again, his face warm with reassurance. "She's fighting, Emma. And she's got the best care possible. You did everything right by calling for help." Emma threw her small arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. It was the kind of hug that came from deep gratitude, the kind that asked for nothing but gave everything. Daniel froze for a second, unused to such innocent affection, but then he wrapped his arms around her gently, feeling the weight of her trust. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. And in that moment, Daniel Mercer, billionaire, businessman, a man who had everything money could buy, felt something he hadn't felt in years, the simple joy of making a difference in someone's life. The long night at the hospital felt endless. Every hour seemed heavier than the one before. Emma refused to close her eyes, afraid that if she slept, Lyly might slip away without her knowing. She sat curled in a chair, her mother beside her, while Daniel stayed close, quietly watching over them both. He didn't leave, not even for a moment. His assistants had called several times, reminding him of meetings and plans waiting for him the next morning, but he silenced his phone. Tonight wasn't about business. Tonight was about a little girl and the golden dog who held her world together. When morning finally came, the sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, soft and warm. Emma blinked at the brightness, her tired eyes stinging from crying through the night. A doctor walked toward them, smiling gently. "She made it through the night," he said. "She's weak, but she's responding to the treatment. She's going to recover." Emma gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Her tears returned, but this time they were tears of joy. "She's okay? Really okay?" The doctor nodded. "Yes, little one. She'll need rest and care, but she'll be fine." Emma jumped up and hugged her mother tightly, and then, without thinking, she ran to Daniel and wrapped her arms around him too. "We didn't lose her. We didn't lose Lyly." Daniel smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. He bent down and hugged her back, his heart full. "I told you she was a fighter, Emma. You did it. You never gave up on her." A little later, the doctors allowed Emma and her mother to see Lyly. The golden dog was lying on a soft blanket, hooked up to fluids, but her tail wagged slowly the moment she saw her family. Emma rushed forward, kneeling by her side. "Lyly. You're still here," she whispered, kissing her dog's head. Lily's eyes blinked tiredly, but there was no mistaking the love in them. She pressed her nose against Emma's small hand as if to say, "I stayed because of you." Daniel stood in the doorway, quietly watching the reunion. The sight of the little girl hugging her dog made something shift inside him. He had closed himself off for years, living behind the walls of wealth and power, but here was something pure, something money couldn't buy. Over the next few days, Daniel continued to check on Emma and Lyly. He made sure the hospital bills were covered, and he even arranged for a special team to visit Emma's home and make the yard safe so Lyly wouldn't find anything harmful again. But what surprised him most was how natural it felt to stay connected to this family. Emma, in her innocent way, didn't treat him like a billionaire. She didn't care about his expensive suits or the car that picked him up. To her, he was simply the man who answered. When she saw him, she ran to him with stories about Lyly's recovery, showing him the little drawings she made of her dog wearing superhero capes. One afternoon, when Lyly was finally back home and getting stronger, Daniel visited their house. Emma had drawn a picture of him, Lyly, and herself standing together under a big tree. At the bottom, in uneven letters, she had written, "My hero answered the phone." Daniel took the paper carefully, his throat tightening. "Did you draw this for me?" he asked. Emma nodded eagerly. "Yes. Because if you hadn't answered, Lyly wouldn't be here. You're our hero." Her words touched him more deeply than he expected. For years, people had called him powerful, wealthy, even ruthless in business. But no one had ever called him hero. And somehow, Hearing it from a little girl meant more than all the titles and awards he had collected in his life. From that day on, Daniel became more than just a visitor. He became a friend. Sometimes he stopped by with treats for Lyly, other times with books or toys for Emma. He never came with reporters or cameras. He didn't want the world to know. This was not for publicity, it was for his heart. Emma's parents were at first hesitant. They couldn't understand why a man of his status cared so much about their family. But over time, they saw the kindness in his actions, the patience with which he listened to their daughter, the quiet joy in his eyes when Lyly wagged her tail. Slowly, their hesitation turned into gratitude. Lyly recovered fully, and her bond with Emma grew even stronger. Wherever Emma went, Lyly followed. And now, sometimes, Daniel walked with them too. He found himself enjoying simple moments he had long forgotten, throwing a ball in the yard, watching a dog chase butterflies, listening to a child's laughter. Years later, when Emma was older, she often told the story of that night. She would stand in front of her classmates or friends and begin with the words, "Once, I called the wrong number but the right person answered." It became more than just a story about saving a dog. It became a story about hope, kindness, and the way a stranger can become family. For Daniel, the memory of that phone call never faded. He knew that wealth could buy almost anything, but it couldn't buy the trust of a child or the unconditional love of a dog. Those were gifts, freely given, and they had changed him more than any business success ever had. And for Emma, no matter how much time passed, she never forgot the night she thought her world was ending and how, instead, it brought her a friend who proved that sometimes miracles arrive in the most unexpected way. Because in the end, it wasn't just Lyly's life that was saved. It was also Daniel's heart.